Hello, everybody, and welcome to the London Mountain Podcast. My name's Greg Hackett, and in this series of interviews, I'm going to be talking to filmmakers who enter their films for our festival, and I'm also going to be talking to community hosts, who are the wonderful people who share those films in their communities. If you think you could be either a filmmaker or a community host, then this is the podcast for you. Enjoy. Hi, and welcome to this edition of the London Mountain Podcast. Today we're heading down to Long Ashton, where there's a community centre in which Kathryn, who's with me now, ran a community event for us at our last iteration. So, hello, Kathryn. How are you?
Hi, Greg. Good, thank you. Nice to be here.
Well, thanks for joining us, taking time out. I want to hear all about this event, but I also want to hear about you and what you get up to down in Long Ashton. But maybe we should start with the community centre and what the setup is there. Could you just tell us a little bit about where you ran the event and why you did it?
So I ran the event, as I say, in the community centre. So we're a village of about 6,000 people, and we're kind of 20 minutes from Bristol city centre, but also 25 minutes to the coast. You can hop over the border into Wales, disappear down into Devon and Cornwall and Dorset pretty easily. So there's a lot of very outdoorsy and adventurous people that live in our village, which is one of the reasons we love it. There's a lot going on at the community centre, lots of fitness stuff and community events, and we've got a couple of community organisations that really try and pull all the different parts of the village together. But we've not got anything that isn't going out and getting on your mountain bike or going climbing in a group of friends. We haven't had really any adventurous events there, if that makes sense. Last year, in 2023, I was sitting at home watching, devouring all the films that you had on the programme last year. And I saw your the offer of kind of running a community event. And I was like, I'd really like to be sitting in the village hall watching all of these films with all my mates in the village and then getting excited about all these adventures and then going off and making plans to do our adventures together. So yeah, that's kind of how it started, really.
Well, gosh, there's so many things I want to come back to you on there. I mean, first of all, I started following Long Ashton because you were involved. I started following on Instagram, and there's all sorts of weird stuff that goes on there. I mean, was it the Dorises? They look pretty adventurous to me.
Some kind of tribute band, I think that was a huge sellout hit.
Yeah, I know, fantastic. I'm going to come down there and start. But also 6,000 people, that doesn't sound like a small village to me. That sounds like a lot of people, isn't it?
So yes, it is a lot of people, but it doesn't feel big. It's very friendly and there's a lot of overlap. You kind of want to go find someone to go cold water swimming with, you'll find someone. And there's 2 schools and 3 pubs and 5 playgrounds. So you pretty much meet everybody you need to within that setup.
Brilliant. I'm glad there's more pubs than schools. I think that's the correct ratio, really. But so you said something there. I've got to come back to that. You said that you'd hope that watching the films would inspire you to go and do things. Has that happened? Is there anything that's come out of the experience that you've gone off with your mates and done?
Yeah, I would say a bit of a kind of ripple effect in lots of different directions. I mean, immediately after the film night, people were messaging to say, I had such a great time. A friend said, my husband's taken the kids off to the climbing centre. He's not done that in ages. He got really inspired by 2.4 with Leo Holding taking his kids, up this massive slab face of, this massive rock face. A couple of people like, we've headed out on a ride. We've been meaning to do it for ages and we finally got round to it. And loads of people who know that I swim, do outdoor swimming were like, okay, we really have to make this happen now, So I think it was more of a catalyst. A lot of these films are entertaining because they're showing you a world and an extreme end of this sport you wouldn't be able to access otherwise. That's the joy of it. They're very inspirational, but it does translate into, do you know what? We can get out and do our own version, really.
That's so good to hear. You don't think that because sometimes I worry that the level of adventure that's going on, I mean, Leo Holding, for example, I wouldn't drag myself up there, let alone any small child. You don't think that is daunting then?
I think if you've got to the point where you bought a ticket for an adventure film festival, you're interested already, and for a lot of people, they've maybe got families or work commitments or caring commitments that mean that they aren't doing as much as they maybe once did, but it's still part of their identity. And so just to have someone remind you, like the feeling that I might get going around, some of the local mountain bike trails or going to the Forest of Dean, which isn't that very far away, and challenging myself to a similar level, that the brothers that were in the film remind me of the name of it, like the Trail Rippers.
Trail Rippers. Everyone talks about the Trail Rippers. They're very popular.
They're so much fun. But, just because I will never attain the level that they're doing in their sport doesn't mean that we don't share the same feeling and we don't get the same things out of the sport. So it's not so much that it's daunting, like, oh, I could never do that. Like, what's our version of that going to be? And so, it's made me think, okay, we can pack the kids up and we can pack the paddleboard and we'll just go. Like, we'll just get out and go on adventure. Like, if they can get their kids up, going back to Leah Holding, like, if they can get their kids up this massive slab of rock, like, we can definitely go on a bit of a longer bike ride, or we could definitely get them in the sea and the plan for this summer is I'll do a sea swim and they'll go on the kayak next to me with their dad. It just expands your horizons of what you think's possible, because we all get stuck in our day to day, oh, well, we can't do that. But it's nice to have your mind opened a bit.
Actually, you can do that. And when you're looking at the films and you were trying to decide what you're going to show, was that going through your mind? Have you got a sort of a tick list of things that you're looking for when you're making a selection?
Yes. So we wanted it to be, so it was me and my husband mainly watching the bulk of the films. My husband Gaz took it very seriously and we had a spreadsheet and everything. So we knew, and some other friends as well. So, we have some friends that are really into their climbing. So they watched all the climbing films and helped select what we showed and that kind of thing. And the mountain biking group, there's a group of friends that kind of watched those ones as well. So we wanted to have a range of pursuits, I suppose, like a range of activities and sports. We wanted a range of people represented as well, in terms of age groups and also locations. Like, it was very Norway heavy this year, Greg, I have to say. Like, it was beautiful. Like, I really now want to go to Norway, but it's nice to see a bit more of the world, isn't it? There was a really amazing ski film that was shot on drones and it was just stunning. And it was at the top of my husband's list. And I was like, it is amazing, but it's 35 or so minutes of this stupendous skiing and boarding. And that's great if you're a skier and you really love being off-piste. But the story behind it was more about making the film, which I loved. I really enjoyed it. But I was thinking, how is that going to relate to quite a cross-section of people that we've got?
And it's the characters that do that often, isn't it? That make it relatable, I think, that provide that kind of opening. Like the Trail Ripper, the mother of the Trail Rippers. She keeps coming up in a couple of conversations I've had. People like that sort of, they're the way into the film, aren't they, in a way?
Yeah, for sure. I think Leah Holding's wife, Tess, like, I just think, she's a GP. We have a lot of mates that are doctors and she happens to be married to this, world-class alpinist and that's what they do. And it's obviously part of her life as well. But, very relatable. Like, she was the one handing out dried mango and saying, yeah, it's scary, but I know that it's, I'm thinking about the needs of the kids, but it's within his scope. She's keeping her family safe. Yeah, that's the relatable side of it, I suppose.
Really pleased to hear that you and Gaz took it so seriously. And it sounds like an awful lot of thought has gone into this. And it obviously paid off because you had a lot of people turn up, didn't you? And obviously the feedback sounds like it was great. But what about the actual night? Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so we did it on a Saturday night and we worked out that we could sell 120 tickets. So we were quite lucky because we had a bit of a blueprint, because we have a community cinema group that's run by about 10 volunteers, and every month they show a variety of different films. So we kind of asked for their advice and things. And to begin with, it was very much like, my idea of the event was basically like the annual beer festival that we hold in the hall. So that kind of vibe, just like all your mates in one place. You kind of see lots of people that meet some people that you didn't. Everyone's just having a nice time, kind of a local time, but with a bit of food and some amazing films. So it wasn't quite as boozy as a beer festival, I'm glad to say. But so we managed to sell out the 120 tickets a week before the event, which I was just absolutely overwhelmed by. I thought it would be fairly popular. And the conversations, I could definitely list probably 50 people that I know would love to come. Hopefully they can. But that was pretty exciting.
Can I ask you about pricing and the conversation you had around, just for people watching this? I think one of the things that people often spend a lot of time fretting over is how much to charge people for coming along. How did that work out?
Definitely had a conversation with the community centre about it. So I think our community cinema, they charge £8 a ticket. And so we decided to set it at that for an early bird. And then, so that was a time frame to try and gauge interest, really, because if you don't sell any, you're like, oh, cripes, okay, what are we going to do? But yeah, so £8 a ticket, going up to £10, I think, kind of for the last 3 weeks before the event. We didn't want to make it too cheap because it was a really good offer. You know, we had 2 hours of great films. We had a local caterer come in and do some food, which, you know, you purchase separately, but we set that up. There was a bar, which was very reasonably priced bar. We had a great raffle, which actually raised about £700. So, as I say, we've got a lot of really good local businesses around us, and I'll maybe come back to that because that was very much part of building the community around the film festival. So I felt like you don't want to make it too cheap and you don't want to make it too expensive, but it's got to be like good value for money rather than cheap. And, you know, we're in a fairly affluent place. I also didn't want it to be like a barrier, like cost to be a barrier. And I did put out on some of the comms, you know, if you'd like to come and, you know, the cost is an object, you know, I can't remember how I phrased it, but, you know, basically contact me for a community ticket, which would basically be your tickets on us. I didn't have anyone contact me, but I wanted that to be the kind of vibe that, you know, please come along.
Did you publicise what you were raising money for, or was that an incentive for people to spend the ticket money, or was that just a byproduct?
So it was a byproduct in terms of my planning. So as I said, like my initial objective was just to get a load of people together. And then we're like, well, we'll obviously charge some ticket money. And I was like, oh, talking to the manager of the community centre, say, well, obviously this could be donated to any money we make could be donated to the community centre. And it's always really good, I think, to have a specific fundraising target, isn't it? Or not necessarily target, but like focus. So they then said, well, actually, the community cinema have said they'll help with the screen, but their screen is falling apart a bit. You know, it takes 4 people and it takes half an hour, and you've got to put it in the right temperature so that it's not too cold. And then you build the frame and you stretch the fabric around the frame, and it's actually great quality. But, you know, in terms of man hours, and there are lots of retired people that help run it, you know, and it's quite an effort for them to do every month. Anyway, so we realised that actually what the community centre could do is, we've got a variety of different spaces, but it was the village hall specifically. If we could fundraise some money to have a screen that would drop down from the ceiling that was always in place, and then alongside that have a decent quality projector instead of just a standalone thing you get out the cupboard and plug in kind of thing. Actually, that then opens up the village hall to be used for more kind of training and corporate events and whatever. So actually, I mean, the village, you know, the community centre after COVID, like a lot of spaces, similar spaces, was really struggling, and the current management team really pulled it out of a bad place. But thinking, what you know, if we're putting this money into something that is going to be good for the sustainability of the village hall, and also great because then next year, you know, 2025, I've already asked you for the date. Like, Greg, when are you planning to host? And everyone's saying, you know, you must do it next year. We'll have an even better screen. So it's also benefiting the whole community. If you want to use the community centre, it needs to be there. So making it sustainable is better.
How much is a new screen and a projector then? How much have you had to find?
So I think the rough cost of it all is about £5,000. So I think we raised £1,700, I think, in total. But because that chunk of money kind of went straight into the pot, the parish council then said, okay, you can, I can't remember the details of it, but, you know, there was that confidence, you know, that we've raised that chunk of money, we can raise that chunk again with a similar event. So, yeah, I need to check in with where they're at, but I'm pretty sure that by the time we get round to January, February in 2025, we should hopefully have some really nice kit to show the films on.
Well, that's just fantastic. What a great story that, you know, the film festival kicked that off, and you were able to get off with a third of your target, I suppose. And yeah, so it sounds like the raffle was amazing, and you mentioned something about businesses. So I'd be quite interested to hear that, because I think, again, community hosts would be interested to hear how they might approach other people in their local area to get involved and support it, either with prizes or money or whatever it is that you got out of them. So what did you get? What did you pull off there?
Well, it started with the local bike shop. And I know the guys in there anyway, because they're much better at bike maintenance than I am. And they were just really excited about the festival, and we're like, oh yeah, I'm going to let so and so know, and everyone's, all these people have said they're excited about it, and I'm like, can I put a poster in your window? So that's kind of how it started. And then I said to them, would you like to sponsor it in any way? Would you like it to be the Bristol Bikesmiths, Long Ashton Film Fest, whatever? And they were like, oh, well, you don't need to name it after us, but, we'll give you some cash, and we'll give you we can find some stuff for raffle prizes. I was like, right, okay. And then I approached some other local businesses. So the founder of Tailfin, who's a bike packing kit company, lives in the village. And he said, yeah, sure, we'll sponsor you. And yeah, we'll chuck in a couple of top tube bike packing kind of bags for you as well. I was like, okay, so people are getting excited about this. Everyone I was talking to about it, and I'm obviously really passionate about it. So that helps. If you're excited about it, you can get other people excited about it. And if you don't tell people, and if you don't ask them, then they're not going to get involved, and they're not going to give you stuff. It's just having the confidence to do it, or just pushing yourself out your comfort zone and going in, or starting small and saying, can we put this poster up? Can I tell you a bit about the event? We've got a raffle, or we've got these sponsors, and going from there. But I suppose I really wanted to raise the profile of the local businesses that we had in the area, and also there are a lot of fitness providers as well. So we've actually got a little it's a small but very professional gym in the community centre that had just recently moved in, and I hadn't even realised they were there. So I was like, well, if I don't know they're there, other people might not as well. So they came on as a sponsor. They gave us a very generous raffle prize, and then I think we had 5 sponsors in the end. So their kind of big logos ended up going on the posters. And then on the night, as I was giving out the raffle prizes, I was saying, doing a bit of blurb about each company, each business. So a few outdoor fitness providers. And then a slightly further afield, I mentioned we've got Ashton Court, which if anyone's ever visited Bristol, you might have gone around on a mountain bike, or, it's an amazing green space. But, Long Ashton, Ashton Court, I thought we need a link here. And there's another bike shop and bike hire place up there. So I just walked in with a poster when I was walking the dog and said, we're running this, just wondering if you're interested. And yeah, they came as a sponsor, gave us some raffle prizes. And then we were chatting away and said, oh, well, why don't we run a ride from Ashton Court, ending at the film festival? And I was like, absolutely amazing. So they were then cross promoting as well, and I think this is where the added value comes in. It's a local event, they want to support it. It's a local business, we want to support them, and then we reach a whole load of new people, and they were able to promote. They've got a little charity group called Shredders, which aims to get kids out on mountain bikes with their families, or kind of raise confidence. And just they were able to open that up to Long Ashton. We've got loads of families with bikes who weren't necessarily aware of it, even though it's at the top of the hill. So it just mushroomed, really. I think if you can connect different businesses and people with the same interest, it just amplifies into something greater than the whole is greater than the sum of its parts kind of thing. And then having done that, organised that bike ride, I was like, oh, right, there's a trail running coach in the village called Mark, and he's, we could do a trail run. It turned out to be, Greg, the worst. I mean, bearing in mind this is the beginning of February, isn't it? It was the worst weather, and still we had people turn up. I mean, it was just a handful, like it wasn't even 10 people. But the fact it was there, and I could say, look, folks, come to the film festival, by all means, like grab a beer, get some like really nice food provided by a local supplier, and just have a great evening. But also, if you want to really embrace it, get out, meet some new people, go with our local coaches and businesses, and have a good time beforehand. So that's definitely an element I'd like to expand a bit for next year.
Yeah. And of course you get, well, it sounds like if you're not careful, you have a fully blown festival down there.
Well, yeah, but this is kind of where it's going.
Yeah, I think it sounds like it. And you get all that social media as well, I guess, from those supporting organisations as well, doesn't it? So the 120 people that came, how many of them did you not recognise them?
There were 2 women that I remember, and I didn't get to chat to them. I really wanted to, because they turned up and they'd brought their camping chairs. And I was like, this is excellent. You are really getting the vibe. And they were like, well, we saw it was in a village hall, and we know what village hall chairs are like, so we thought we'd be comfy. And they just, and I don't know who they were, but I hope they come next year and bring their chairs so I can chat to them properly. So yeah, there were people that I didn't recognise, people that were kind of friends of friends. A friend of a friend came down from Cheltenham with his 7-year-old son, sat front row, and he was just engrossed the whole time. I think there were probably people from the village that just came because it was there. We didn't actually advertise it massively far and wide because we kind of didn't need to. Like, the businesses put it on their social media. I promoted it within the village and like within friends. And actually, I would say kind of anyone thinking about organising it, if that sounds kind of daunting, I very much aim towards person to person kind of promotion, like word of mouth. So kind of sending it to people that I knew were particularly interested in. I sent it to a friend and neighbour who's a big kayaker, and I was like, oh, can you send this out to your social group, instead of just putting a poster up in the local outdoor shop and hoping people come, sort of thing.
Can you remember when you bought the pass? How important was it for you to get started early? Or was it a late thing?
I was an eager beaver. I literally said to the community centre team, I said, it's going to be coming out soon. I'll let you know when. And literally the email came and I was like in the office looking over Sarah's shoulder saying to Suzanne, have you got the hall booked? And she bought the community pass. And I think on the page, you go to the website, don't you? You see all the community events, and there was like us and like a couple of others. And I was like, yes, we're in. Just because I knew I'd had it in mind since the previous year, really. And it was the right timing for me to do a bit of a project, to be honest. So I think I've mentioned to you before, like actually I've had long COVID for the last 9 months. And that was another element of organising the festivals. I was at the point where I couldn't go back to work because I just didn't have the stamina. I had a lot of fatigue and noise and light sensitivity and a lot of pain. But I could do, 10 minutes on a screen to begin with. And so I was just doing snippets. I was doing it in really bite-sized chunks. And then I would have a half an hour meeting with the ladies in the community centre, and I would have to go down home and have a sleep afterwards. But it was a way of connecting me to my community, to my friends that I would do all these adventure sports with that I couldn't do currently, and also enjoy that feeling of being an adventurous person. I spent a lot of time in bed and on the sofa over that winter, and it was a pretty long winter, wasn't it? It really kind of got me through, and it gave me a bit of a purpose. So yes, I wasn't going swimming in the marine lake, but I did watch the Ross Edgley film again and was like, I was there with him swimming up and down this loch going a bit crazy.
Yeah, well, that's lovely. I mean, that's really nice to hear that. I think is, sometimes, yeah. I mean, we launched in COVID, so in a way, that's kind of part of our DNA that it helps you through the winter, And so, just moving on to you mentioned swimming. It sounds like you do a bit of everything, though. Are you swimming again now?
Yes, on and off. I'd say kind of energy is still the limiting factor. I think what the film fest did was get me excited for spring and just remind myself that it's not that you are what you do necessarily. It was very much still part of my identity that I'm an outdoorsy person.
Oh, it's so nice to hear, and it's really nice to hear that the films and that running the event was part of that journey as well. Really is nice to hear that. So yeah, it sounds to me like you had the perfect event. I can't really think of how you might improve on that. There's almost a risk that you might turn it into some Uber commercial thing, which would be horrible.
No, don't worry, Greg. We went.
Don't go down that route. But what are your plans for next year? Is there anything that you would change or add, do differently?
I think I'd have a little bit more headspace about connecting with groups that are kind of doing the activities, because it was very much like learning how to put on a film festival, which was quite freeing, really. I was like, look, everyone, I've never done this before. It's better than nothing. And if it goes wrong, then I'm going to learn from it. It was really a freeing experience, actually, from that point of view. Like, no expectations, I suppose is what I'm going to say. Yeah, more of the activities, I think. So I'd really like to take people on a swim. Obviously, it'll be like February, March, so I'm not going to take like brand new people and chuck them into 10-degree water at that time of year, but certainly add a swim in there. And also, we're really lucky in Bristol, have loads of great climbing centres. So there's one kind of 15 minutes into Bristol. So probably like see if they would do a bit of a session for us there.
I can't wait. to hear how it goes next year, and I can't wait to hear that you've installed your new projector and your cinema screen, and that's all working properly, so you don't have to spend, was it 6 hours putting it up or something?
It's not that bad, but we were very grateful to all the folks that came early to set it up and then stayed late to take it down. Yeah.
All right. Well, look, I'm going to call the interview there. It's been an absolute delight talking to you. Well done on your event.
Thank you. You too, Greg. Bye.
Hey, everybody, and thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed that. Don't forget, if you want to be a community host, it is really, really easy to bring adventure to your hometown, village, wherever it is you hang out, and raise money for your club, your charity, your adventurous cause. All the details are on our website. Check it out, and we'll see you in February. Thank you. Bye.